Next, let's go to our demo project. So we can close this inspect area, go to the demo project on the browser. When we scroll down, the next area we want to work on is the testimonial area. So back to our main project. After the Why Choose Us area, below it we want to add the testimonial section. Now back to our code. In the HTML, after the section for feature sections, below it we want to add a section, and then we'll give it a class called Testimonial Section. Inside the Testimonial section, we'll create a h2 tag and then give it a class called Section Title. Inside the h2 tag, the text will be what our clients say. And then we'll create a paragraph tag. In it, we'll add this text. Okay, let's close this CSS tab so we have enough room to write our text. So the text read, "We take pride in guiding people through every step with clarity, care, and professionalism. Here is what clients across say about their experience." Then we'll create a button tag. In the button tag, the text will be a less than symbol. So to add this symbol, we use the Amsterdam with hash and then 10094. The button will have a class, and we'll give it navbtn. Also taking another class called Priv. So this button will be the previous button to take us to the previous slide. And next, we want to create a div, and we'll call it Testimonial Carousel. Inside this Testimonial Carousel class, we'll create another class, and we'll call it Testimonial Track. So this testimonial track will house our testimonial items. And then we want to create the first testimonial item. So we have div.testimonial item. And then in the testimonial item, we want to add our image. So we'll create a div with a class name image wrapper. In the image wrapper, we want to create an image tag. And then the alternative text will be testimonial 1. For the image source, we need to bring our image into the project. So to do that, we'll go to our File Explorer. While in the File Explorer, we'll go to Documents, and then we'll go to Project Sample. In Project Sample, we'll select Main, the IMG folder, and then we select the Testimonial folder. Use Ctrl+C to copy the Testimonial folder, then go back to Document folder, select Glue Wave Air, and then inside the Image folder, use Ctrl+V to paste the Testimonial folder. And then back to our code. For the image source, we'll type in img/ to select the Testimonials folder, and then we'll select Client1. Also, in the sidebar of our code editor, when we click on Image, we can see the Testimonial folder. After the image wrapper, we want to add a paragraph tag. And then in the tag, we'll add this text. So in the paragraph tag, we have the client testimony, which says, "The process was well explained and stress-free. I felt supported from the first consultation to the final step." After that, we want to add the H4 tag, which will then provide the client's name, Sarah Mitchell, and her title is HR Manager. So with this, we've been able to create the first client testimony, and then all we have to do is to copy the testimonial item div, and then below it, we'll paste it to create the second testimonial item. When we paste it, we want to change the image to client2, and then the alt text should be testimonial2. Then we also have to change the text. So the second client says, "Everything was handled professionally and on time. The guidance I received made a huge difference." The client's name is James Carter, and his title is Business Consultant. We'll copy the second testimonial, and below the second testimonial, we'll paste it to get our third testimonial. For the third testimonial, we'll change the image to client03, and the alt text to be testimonial3. Also, we'll change the text in the paragraph tag. So in the paragraph tag, the third client said, clear communication and honest advice throughout the entire process. I always knew what to expect. Let's close this sidebar. And then for the client name, we have Olivia Raymond. And then for the client title, we have marketing specialist. Next, we'll copy the slide 3, and then below, we'll paste it to get slide 4. For the slide 4, we'll change the image to client 04, and the alt text to be testimonial 4. We'll change the paragraph text to so the font client paragraph says, reliable service with great attention to detail. Everything went smoothly from start to finish. And the client name is Daniel Thompson. While his title is software engineer. Then lastly, we'll copy testimonial 4, and below it, we'll paste to get testimonial 5. For testimonial 5, we change the client image to client 05, and then the alt text to be testimonial 5. In the paragraph tag, we'll write, so for testimonial 5, the paragraph reads, professional, responsive, and easy to work with. I would confidently recommend their services. The client name is Olivia Ben. And her title is project coordinator. So this div end our 5th testimonial, and this div wrap the testimonial track. After the testimonial track, we have the testimonial carousel, and then our section. After the testimonial carousel, we want to add another button, so I'll just copy this button. And then after this last div, before the section, I'll paste it. It will take nav button class, but this time around, the class name will be next. And then I'll change the text to the greater than icon. So we have Amsterdam hash 10095. If you want to follow this video accurately, so you can pause the video and write the code correctly before you move to the next. Now let's go to our browser When we refresh our main project and then scroll down, we have this client section. Though it's not looking nice yet, but when we are done styling, you'll see how well it will appear. So back to our code, and then in CSS, I would like to split my screen. So we have the HTML by the left and then the CSS by the right. My CSS, I will scroll down to the end of the code. In my HTML, I will scroll up to the beginning of the testimonial section. So we want to begin our CSS styling. I will select the testimonial section. Before that, let's title the area we're coding in our CSS. So I'll call it Testimonial Section. And then I'll comment this title. Below it, we want to begin styling our testimonial section. So we have testimonial section, and then I'll give it a background. The background should take a linear gradient. And then to the right, we have this color. And then this color. What could be the error? Okay, this is 0, not O. So we have this dark blue linear gradient color. I will increase my CSS screen a little so we have enough room to code the CSS. The color will be white. Text align will be center. Padding will be 80 px and then 20 px. Overflow will be hidden. And then position will be relative. So we've styled the testimonial section. The next is the section title, which is the H2. So below testimonial section, we want to call section title. And then for color, we want to give it a global variable called test white. The font size will be 21 px. The margin bottom will be 20 px. Text transform will be uppercase. And then font weight will be 700. For the P tag, which is testimonial section, and then P, the max width will be 600 px. The margin top will be 0, right and left will give it auto, and then 40 px. Font size will be 18 px. Line height will be 28 px. And then color will be test white. So that is it for the H2 and the paragraph tag. Now let's go to our browser and then refresh. Okay, so we have this background and then we have the title, the paragraph, and then the image. So we need to work on the carousel next. Back to our code. We want to call the testimonial carousel class. So we'll give it a position of relative. The width will be 90%. The max width will be 1100 px. The margin auto and then overflow will be hidden. So let's see what we have. In the browser, when we refresh, we don't have much changes yet. So back to our code. The next area we want to style is the testimonial track. We'll give it display flex. And then a transition. The transition will take a transformation of 0.8 seconds and then ease. Now, before this transform is being used in the transition, we need to create a transformation. For this transformation, like we did for our hero section, we're going to use JavaScript to style the transformation. So for now, let's just work with transition. And then since we've applied display flex for the carousel track, which is housing each item, when we refresh, we can now see they are displayed horizontally, which is actually what we want. So back to our code. Now we want to style each testimonial item. So we get the testimonial item. And then we want to give it a flex of 100%. We've already given the parent element display flex. Each individual item, we can use the flex to determine how they will be positioned inside the main container. So the first one says flex grow should be 0. It means that this container or this item should not increase. Flex shrink should be 0. Also, this container should not shrink no matter the screen size. And then flex basis of 100%. It means that it should always take 100% of its main container. So the next one I want to give it is a max width. The max width should take 360 px. The padding should be 20 px, 30 px. The margin should be 0 and 10 px. The background should be our BG background. The mean height should be 380 px. Then its content, which is the content inside this testimonial item, should display flex. And then its flex direction should be column. So when you give an element display flex, it's meant to display its item horizontally. Now you can change the flex direction using this flex direction. And then instead of horizontal, we want it to be vertical. That's why we gave it flex direction column. And then align items to the center. Justify contents. It should be center also. And finally, we give each items a gap of 20 px. Now we've been able to style the testimonial item. We can also refresh our browser to see the outcome. So this is what we have. The remaining item is inside this container here. Now let's go continue our styling. Back to the code editor. We want to call the testimonial item image wrapper. And just copy this testimonial item class. And then copy the image wrapper class. For the image, we want to give it a width of 72 px. So it's going to be very small. The height also 72 px. The margin left auto. The margin right auto. And then a box shadow. For the box shadow, left to right should be 0. Top to bottom should be 7 px. And then the spread should be 18 px. And then we have arrow GBA of 0, 0, 0, and then 0.3. The next one to style is the testimonial item paragraph. This will take a font size of 1.1 rem, a line height of 1.6, a margin bottom of 15 px, and then a color, which is our global variable text. For the testimonial item H4, we have a color. It will take our primary color, and then if the primary color does not exist, it will take a yellow color. The font weight will be bold. The next thing we want to style is our nav buttons. So we've been able to style all the testimonial item, its image, paragraph, and H4. The next area we want to style is the nav button. So we'll select the nav BTN, and then position will be absolute. Top we take 50%, transform, we will translate y minus 50. And then background will be transparent. Or we can give the background our primary color. Then for color, to be white. Also, it will take a border none, a font size of 24 px, a padding, we have 5 px, 14 px, and then 7 px. We'll give the cursor pointer. So when you hover on the button, you will see a hand symbol. And then transition for the background. It will be 0.3 seconds and then ease. Also, when we hover on this nav button, we have nav btn hover. We want the background to take our global variable, which is primary hover. Then we want to position the previous button to the left. So we say left will be 10 px. And then we want to position the next button to the right. So we have nav btn dot next, and then right will be 10 px. When we go to our browser and then we refresh, we now have this beautiful testimonial area. So with JavaScript, we'll make this next button work, and then we want it to slide every 5 seconds. So back to our code, we can close this CSS tab. Before we work on the JavaScript, let's work on the view when we are on tablet and then on mobile view. So for tablet view, we use @media. When the main width is 768 px, we want the testimonial item to take a flex. So the flex grow will be 0, flex shrink will be 0, and then for flex basic, we want it to be 50%. Now when we are using mean width, it means that for screen size greater than 768, okay? So from 768 upward, and this should be for tablet view, we want each of the box to take 50%. So at that point, only about 2 boxes should display for a particular screen size. And then we also create another media. And this time when the main width is 992 px, The testimonial item should take a flex. The flex growth should be 0, and then flex string should be 0. But flex basis this time should be 33.33%. So a screen greater than 992px should be desktop screen because we are saying mean width from 992 upward. Each of these testimonial items should take a width of 33.33%. So this time we're going to have just 3 testimonial items displayed on the device view. Now when we go to our browser and we refresh, this is the desktop screen. We have 3 items. If I should inspect and then go to 9 when the mean width is 992 and above. Then if we go down, when it's 768 and above, we're having 50%, 50%. So at this point, we have only 2 testimonial items being displayed. And then when it's 768, we need to have 1 being displayed. So with the help of JavaScript, when we click here, it should move to the next slide. And also, at every 5 seconds interval, we want this to change. So we'll take it back to desktop view and then go to our code. In our code, we can close this CSS style, and then in the JavaScript area, we want to begin writing our JavaScript after the init carousel function. So just below here, we can start writing our code. While writing the JavaScript, we can also split our screen so we can be seeing the HTML elements we are calling. So scroll up to the beginning of the testimonial section. First, we want to get the testimonial track. But before we get the testimonial track or every other item, we want everything to be in its own function. Okay? So we want to create a function so when our page loads, we can start executing our code. So we have document dot to add event listener, and then the event listener will be DOM content loaded. So when the web page loads, we want this function to execute. Then in the function, we want to create a constant variable. We'll call it track. And then we want to get the testimonial track and assign it to this track variable. The next variable we want to create is for the slides. So we want to get the slides and then store them in an array. We'll create a const variable called slides. And then in it, we'll create an array. And then get all the testimonial items. So we'll use document.querySelector all. In it, we'll pass the testimonial item class. The next variable we want to create is for the next button. And then we'll get the button and store it in this variable. Next variable we want to create is for the previous button. And then we'll get the previous button and store it in this variable. Now that we've gotten our elements, we want to initialize some variable. So we have let index be equal to 0. We are starting from the first slide, and then let interval. This point will just initialize interval. And then we also want to create a variable called visible count. In this variable, later on, we'll store the number of slides that is visible on every screen size, be it the mobile view, the desktop view, or the tablet view. Okay, next we want to do is to create a function that will determine how many slides should be displayed or should be visible based on the screen size. To create that function, we'll call the function keyword, and our function will be get visible count. In this function, we want to use an if statement and then when the screen width is less than or equal to 768px, we want to return 1. So when the screen width is 768px, we want to return only one testimonial item. To get the number of items that will display on tablet view, we're going to say when the screen width is less than or equal to 992, we want to return 2. And then lastly, we want to return so any screen other than these two, we're going to return 3. And then we can now assign this get visible count to this variable called visible count. The next one we want to do, just like we did for the hero section, we want to create a function that will update the UI, which is the testimonial area. So to do that, we'll create a function and then we'll call it update with. In this function, we want to first get the visible count. Remember, the visible count is the number of testimonial items that could be displayed on a particular screen size. So visible count will be equal to get visible count. The next thing we want to do is to get the width of a testimonial item and then store it in a variable. To do this, we'll create a variable called slide width. And then we can use the first slide and then use this function called get bouncing client rect to get the width of the first slide. Then we want to add 20 to it. Now this slide with index of 0 and get bouncing client rect dot width is able to get the width of the slide. Then we had to add 20 because in our CSS, when you click on the CSS tab, go to the testimonial item, you can see we gave margin 0 up and down, and left and right is 10 px. So we need to get that 1010, which is 20, and then add it so we can get the total width of the first slide. The next we want to do is to use JavaScript to apply the transformation style to the track element. So we can say track.style.transform to be equal to. Remember, this symbol is not a quotation. To get it, you use shift and then the key before 1. So we have translate y, and then in brackets we have minus $sign. So this track.style.transform has been able to add a new transformation style to our track elements. What this means is that when we go to our browser, in this escalate draw, let me erase the previous drawing we have. So let's say this is our device view. We also have another section which we'll call the testimonial track. Now this testimonial track, remember in our CSS, we display the testimonial track flex, and this testimonial track contains our testimonial item. And we have 5 testimonial items. So we're going to draw our testimonial item. We have testimonial item 1. We have the second. We have the third. We have the fourth. And then we have the fifth. So you can call this 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Now, in our visible screen, which is the desktop screen, we have 3 testimonial items on display. Also recall that we are able to move to the 4th testimonial item when we update our index. So initially, the index will be equal to 0. And then for one testimonial item, in our CSS, one testimonial item is having a width of 360px, but it also have a margin which is 10px. So we need to add the width plus the margin, and this margin is for both left and right. So total of the margin will be 20px. So we have 360px plus 20px. Here we have 360px plus 20px. And this will give us 380px. So what we want to achieve now is that when we click on the next button, let's create our button. For this button, we'll call it the previous button. And this other button will be the next button. So when we click on the next button, we want to move the carousel track to the left by 380px. And when you move it to the left by 380px, the carousel item 4 becomes visible in our device view. and the carousel item 1 goes out of the device view. So it kind of moves the carousel track. So we can update this, and we will draw another carousel item. This becomes carousel item 1. This is updated to 2. This is 3. This is 4. And then this is 5. So we can delete this other one. And then, and then we can adjust the carousel track. So when we move, we have the carousel item 1 out, and then the carousel item 2, item 3, and item 4 becomes visible. And when we click on next again, the 5th carousel item goes into the view, and we have the 1 and 2 out of the view. So this is what we want to achieve. And when you see this smooth movement, what enables our carousel track move smoothly to the left and to the right is because we have this transition, okay? So with transition 0.8 seconds is. Without this transition, when we click on next, the carousel track will jump. But with the transition, you will see the way it moves smoothly. So with that, let's go back to our code. In the JavaScript, we now understand what this actually means. We have index times slide width, which means if the index is 0 and we multiply by the slide width, we are still on 0, which makes the 3 slide to be visible on desktop screen. And then when index is 1 and we times it by 380px, then we have to move to the next slide, which is slide 4. How it's going to move is that it will move the item to the left by 380px, which is why we have the minus symbol here. And then when the index is 2, we're going to move 2 times the slide width to the left. The next we want to create is the next and the previous function. So we'll create a function, and the function name will be move next. For move next, we want to increase the index by 1. So when we click on the next button, we want the index to increase so that we can move to the next slide. And when the index increases, we also want to call this function called update width. And then update width, we use the current index to calculate the movement of the testimonial track. The next function we want to create, we'll call it move breadth. And for this function, we want to reduce the index by 1. And then we should also update the carousel track. Now in the move next function, we want to control when we get to the end of the slide. So when we get to the end of the slide, we want to change the index back to 0 so that we have just the first 3 slides on display. So we have if in bracket index is greater than. How do we know what index should be greater than? Let's go to our browser. Let's reset this so you understand fully. So I'll increase this and then delete this and this. Reduce this and then add a carousel item. So this should be 5. 4, 3, 2, and 1. So when we click on next, since initially the index is 0, when we click on next, we want the index to be 1, which will multiply 380, and then the carousel track moves to the left, and we have the carousel item 4 on display. Also, when we click on next again, index becomes 2, and then we have the fifth carousel item in our visible screen. So the carousel item 1 and the carousel item 2 goes out of the screen. Now, when we click next again, we don't have any other carousel item to display because we just have 5, right? So we need to set it in a way that when we click next, the index returns to 0, which will make the carousel track reset back and display only the first, second, and third carousel item in our visible area. So back to our code. We want to use the total slide to minus the visible count. That's how we get the value 2. So what is total slide? We have slide.length. So slide.length is 5. When we minus it with visible count on desktop view is 3. So we have 5 minus 3. We're going to have 2. So once index is greater than 2, we want to reset index to be 0. So for the next button, when the index gets to 2, it means we've exhausted our carousel item. And at this point, our fifth carousel item is on the visible area, right? Now for the previous, if we should click the previous button, let's reset our carousel track first. Let me see if I can cut this out and then paste it here. And then I should adjust this here. Also adjust this. I can have the carousel item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. So initially, since we have index 2, we have carousel item 5 here. And then when we click on previous, we want the carousel track to move to the right and then display the fourth carousel item. So we have carousel item 2, 3, and 4 on display. When we click on previous again, it will move to the right again, and we have carousel item 1, carousel item 2, and carousel item 3. So I'll just update here. And then I'll adjust this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So when we click on previous, at this point, we've exhausted our index, which is now 0. Because when it was 2, we had 5. When it was 1, we had the carousel item 4 here. And now when we click on previous again, it's now 0. We have carousel item 1, 2, and 3 on display. When we click on previous again, it means that we want to reset it to go to the end of the carousel items, which is carousel item 5. So when we click on previous again, now that it is 0, we want carousel item 3 4, and 5 on display. So this is what we want to achieve next. And then to achieve that, we say if in bracket index becomes less than 0, we want to reset the index to take age.length minus visible count. So what's slide.length is 5. And what's visible count? 3. So 5 minus 3 becomes 2. When we click previous, and then we go less than 0, it should display the fifth slide, and then the index should reset to 2. The next thing we want to do is to add an event listener for the next button. So we have this next btn which we brought into our code. When we select it, we want to add event listener. And the event listener is going to take a click function. When we click on it, we want to call the move next function. And then for the previous button, we also add an event listener. It will be a click function. And when we click on it, we want to call the move previous function. The next thing we want to do is to create an interval, which the testimonial track will use to move the testimonial items once the page loads. So for this, we'll create a function, and then we'll call it start interval. In it, we want to assign to the interval variable a set interval function. And then the set interval function will execute the move next function every 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, this set interval will execute and it will run the move next function. Then before the code ends, we want to call the update with function. So it will execute. And then we also want to call the start interval function. So both of them will execute once our page loads. Also, in the next button, when we click it to move to the next slide, we want to first clear interval. So whatever interval is in operation at that moment, we want to clear it first before the move next function executes. And then after the move next function executes, we want to also call the start interval function. Same for the previous button. When we click the previous button, before the move previous function executes, we want to clear our interval. After we clear the interval, we can now execute the move previous function. And then we also want to start interval. Finally, when we resize to desktop view or mobile view or tablet view, we also want to update the testimonial track width. So to do that, we're going to call the update width during screen resizing. So we have window.add event listener. And then we're going to pass the resize keyword, which will then execute the update width function. With this, we've come to the end of our JavaScript code, and then we can go and refresh the page. And then we'll wait for 5 seconds. We can see it didn't move as expected. I think the error should be from our transform translate. So transform translate should be X, not Y. So if you wrote Y before, you need to correct it. Now back to our code. Let's refresh and then wait for 5 seconds. Okay, you can see the smooth transition. And then we will click the button next, next, next. We will click previous, previous, and when we go less than 0, it moves to the 5th slide back. So you can see our testimonial section is now working perfectly. If you don't understand the code, you can go through the code again, write it one after the other, and then see how it works on the web page. See you in the next class.